What is up, everybody? I'm Andy, this is That Car Vlog channel, and today we're going to figure out why my old 76 Chevy will not fire. It will crank, but it will not fire. It will not run. Sadly, this happened when I was on my way to the last Cars and Coffee back in the middle of April. It died on the road and wouldn't start. We're getting absolutely no fuel to the filter. Probably can't see that. The clear body of this filter is a bit nasty. It needs changed anyways. But we're not even getting any fuel coming into it, let alone through it. Now, from what I've heard, it can be one of two possibilities. Either some bad fuel line, although this line from here to the carburetor is brand new. It's less than a year old. It's about a year old. Down here, the mechanical fuel pump, which could also be the problem. Now, there are several soft fuel lines that run into it, that run from the gas tank. And today, hopefully, or sometime in this video, I'm going to figure out if any of that is the problem. To start with, though, I will have to drop this fuel tank. Sadly, it has about a half tank of gas in it, so that might be an issue. This is going to be pretty heavy. Right here, hopefully we can see, is where the fuel lines connect. We have one here and one here, and they actually run up over the frame and into the tank. First things first, we're going to have to take the lines off. For that, I'm going to have to drop the tank. It's probably a lot easier than lifting the bed off the truck. And in order to make sure that happens, I've already put the truck in the air on some ramps, and I've zapped those bolts with some penetrating fluid. So let's see what happens. The first thing we're going to have to do is take off this bolt right here. And I had light, but now I don't. This bolt here that holds this plastic guard on the bottom of the tank. I've already broken the bolt loose because, well, it's probably been on there for the last 42 years. Now, it just comes right off. And now you can see why we had to do that, because it attaches to this tank strap bracket. Okay, so we used a 1/2 size socket to remove this bolt here that had that plastic shielding. Now, if we come up under here, we have right here, there's 4 of them. You can't see the other 2 for the fuel lines, but they're there. And we have 4 here. Those are a 9/16 size socket. I have already gone ahead and broken those loose. They weren't as hard as I thought. But before taking those out, we have to come over here and undo the fuel lines. And that just will require a set of needle nose pliers or standard pliers. And just be prepared to have a little bit of gasket on you, because there may still be some in these lines, even though it's not reaching the front of the truck. Okay, so fuel lines have been taken off. All of the bolts have been broken free. I was quite pleased with how easily those lines came off. It only got a little bit of gas out of them. Now, we'll take the bolts out of both hangers And I've rigged up some supports so this half-full gas tank doesn't crush me. One other important step that I almost forgot and could have ruined this whole job is right here. We have to take the filler neck off of the body. It's just these 3 Phillips head screws that come out. I stuffed a rag in here, keep anything from falling in the tank. And now we can get the last 2 bolts out from underneath and try to take this thing out. Photo bomber. Okay. Another thing I noticed, to get this out, there is this bolt and clip here, which holds the fuel lines on top of this cross member right here.
In this video,
we have to take that out. That is also a 1/2 inch socket, and that should free the lines, and we should be able to get the tank out. I already have it down a little bit, sitting on blocks, but I've got to get those lines detached first. Please pay no mind to my video bombing child over there. Alright, the fuel lines have been successfully routed up and over the frame. The clip is out. Now here we have the wires that run the fuel gauge. We have this wire here that runs up front, and this one is a ground wire. This has to be taken off with a 1/2 inch socket. Also, by the way, going back to the fuel line clip, you'll need a 1/2 inch wrench to hold the bolt up top while using the socket to take the nut off. So detach this wire. Luckily there's some slack in this hot wire, and hopefully we'll be able to pull this down enough to detach it from the top of the sending unit. Okay, and the gas tank is out. We used baby steps, putting in different size blocks underneath it, pulling them out and getting down to the ground. No jack required. This power wire, the sensor wire that goes to the gauge, has more slack than I expected, and here we can see the fuel lines run into the top of the sending unit. We'll take those off and we'll see how much we have to pay to get some new line. Alright, and now we are on day 2 of this project, mainly because rain was coming yesterday. So today we have to detach these fuel lines from these sending unit tubes. And remembering where the new ones go is actually not a problem. I thought it would be, but one is bigger than the other, so kinda can't mess that up. I brought along the handy dandy rolled up tape measure, which is used for fabric, but it will help to more accurately measure how much I need. And it looks like we have to cut these off just because they've been on there so long. So I have my pocket knife, freshly sharpened. Can't find my utility knife. So we'll just have to work with what we got. Here goes. Okay, and just like that, the old fuel lines are off of the tank. Had to do a little bit of cutting, just on the length of the inlet tube, just to pull them away, but wasn't too bad. Now that we're in the light, we can much better see these lines are in pretty rough shape. They're cracked and corroded and eaten away, and there's some chips out of that one. So they really do need replaced. We'll remove these clamps, we'll reuse those. I've already measured, seen how much I need. Now we just have to take off this line here, which runs from the hard metal fuel lines into the fuel pump. And now we'll work on that. Looks like that's got a worm gear clamp here, and I think it's got the same thing down here. This shouldn't be too hard. I think this fuel pump's only a few years old, so hopefully they shouldn't be too bad to remove. Alright, and just like that, the small line between the metal fuel lines and the fuel pumps have been taken off, and I think we may have found the real culprit of the problem. And most people would be mad if they realized this was the actual culprit and took all this stuff off, but I'll be glad to have all new fuel lines. That just means they'll last that much longer. Now, we'll remove these old clamps and go see how much I gotta pay to get new lines. Alright, gonna go get some new fuel line. Going down to the local O'Reilly Auto Parts. Good thing about this Kia, now downtime with the truck isn't so bad. And my child trying to play me with the locks here. So now we gotta go. And now, brand new fuel hose. Thanks to the folks at O'Reilly. I like coming here. And now it's time to go home, cut it, put it on, and see if the truck runs. Alright, back home. I got my first small length of fuel hose cut to go up front on the fuel pump. Here's our hose clamps. We'll just slide these on before attaching the hose. Let's go put it on. Okay, and right here, the new fuel line is in place. It wasn't too bad to get it on the tubes, although to get it on one of them I did put a little bit of this liquid rich lube just around the beginning of the tube to get to slide on more easily. Just right around this part of the tube right here. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, this part where it flares out. And this helped the line to get up on there a little easier. I think I might take a small bit of sandpaper to these two just to get some of the corrosion off before I slide the new lines on there. And maybe even just a little bit of that lube, just to make sure that everything will slide on there nice and I can get the clamp on behind this flared part. So let's do these gas tank lines. Okay, we're going to cut a length of the larger tube to go to the gas tank. Now when cutting this, when measuring and cutting, I just use the roll measuring tape. Once again, it's the fabric measuring tape for sewing and whatnot, but it's just so really good for accurate measurement. I took down all my measurements from the old stuff. I measure, I'll just mark everything with a metallic Sharpie, that way I can see the cut. And I'm not using anything special to cut, just using my pocket knife. Just sharpened that this morning. It's really good and sharp, and I'll sharpen it again after all this so that I can just use it at work tomorrow. This tube here to the fuel pump, just so you know, was 10 inches. So that's a 10-inch length. I measured the old hose for the large size, and it measured 24.5 inch. So to be safe, I'm going to cut this thing at 25. Alright, new fuel lines are in place, clamped in. I did use a little bit more of that spray lube around there just to make sure they slide up in there nicely. These things are ready to go, and we are actually ready now to lift this tank back into place. The way we did it yesterday to get it down was we used blocks and bricks and other blocks, using baby steps to bring it down little by little. We're going to reverse that process, and that's how we'll get it up. And this is my helper. He was a great help yesterday pulling out the blocks. He's going to be a great help putting them back in, isn't he? So, yep. And what's the help? There's a block there. Let's do it. Okay, now if you can tell, we've got the gas tank almost halfway up. Before I go any further, I want to show everyone. As you can see, here's the hanger bracket. You got your 4 bolt holes. And this is where it attaches. Here you have this larger bolt that just kind of sticks out from the top of the bracket. That goes through, if you can see, that large hole between the 2 bolt holes on the frame rail. This happens on both ends of the tank. That will actually hold the tank, hang the tank in place while you align it to put your bolts in, which makes things a lot easier than I ever thought it would be. Let's continue. Alright, this is the clip that holds these fuel lines to the top of the frame rail. First thing we have to do before we feed them over the frame rail is to slide them into it, like so. Then to attach is the exact opposite of how we took it off. Come back when the lines have been fed, clamp is on, and fuel tank is in. Okay, our fuel tank has been mounted. Main bolts to hold it on have been torqued down. These are 9/16 bolts. Just torque them till you get them nice and tight. We've reattached the clip to hold the fuel lines to the frame rail, as well as the grounding wire for the sending unit. Lines have been clamped into place onto the hard lines. And we've reattached the filler neck to the body. 3 Phillips screws, that's all that takes. I will remove the rag that I put in there to block debris and bugs. Reattach our gas cap. And now we test. I didn't bring the keys with me. I have keys to every car on this, and I sometimes forget to bring them with me. There we go. Now there's no fuel anywhere past the gas tank, so this might take a minute. Have me a can of starting fluid. Maybe we can help to start this process. People say less is more, but I believe I need all that I can get. Also help if I push the gas to close the choke. Go again. Alright, so we're not getting any fuel, it seems, to the filter. We're not drawing any, so it still could be the fuel pump. On this one, this is a 2-line 40 gallon per hour fuel pump. In my area it's about $17 at O'Reilly, which is reasonable. To get this off, you'll need your flathead screwdriver for the worm gear clamp on the soft line. You'll need the 5/8 opening wrench for this line here, and you'll need a 7/16 socket for the 2 mounting bolts. Let's take that off. Alright, so I took the old fuel pump off, and it is most definitely shot. I don't know how we can see, but there's supposed to be a spring right in this area and behind here, and that is no longer a whole spring. This thing is gone, barely moves. So I'm going to run down to O'Reilly and get a new one. Now the thing I have to do first though is down in here. You see at the end of this screwdriver there is a push rod. You know, that little shiny bit right there at the end of the screwdriver. These are push rod driven fuel pumps. There's a lobe on, I don't know if it's the cam or the crankshaft. I'm going to say it's probably the crank. I'm not really sure. And that's what pushes on this bit here. When this comes out, that push rod wants to rest against the inside of the engine. And so I had to move that out of the way. I just had this starter shim, super thin, that I was able to wedge in there and push that up, and right now that flathead is holding it in place. So, now that's out, we're going to go to O'Reilly again. We're going to get a new fuel pump for this beast. See you then. We're back from O'Reilly. We have the new fuel pump, but we're not quite ready to put that on yet. Right here, the gasket mating surface, we have to scrape the remainder of the old paper gasket off to ensure a good seal. I have this gasket scraper that I bought about $6 last year sometime, and it has served a very good purpose. It's done many gaskets. Very simple. Just scrape the gasket off. This gasket's going nicely, I like that. So we'll get that done, be right back. Okay, first thing we have to do is take this gasket and mate it to the back side of the mounting surface. I saw a recommendation on another YouTube video to use a little bit of this as a sort of glue, any kind of gasket maker, to hold that in place, because you're going to have a challenge of keeping the push rod that drives this thing out of the way while you slide this into place. I have a large flathead holding it down right now, but just in case that's going to be too large and in the way, I do still have the starter shim that I can use to hold that push rod out of the way as I slide this bit, this lever, in there. Okay, so here we've got the new fuel pump started. It is a bit of a challenge on overcoming spring tension to get it into place without slipping from its placement in relation to the push rod. However, I do believe the push rod is still positioned correctly, and the bolts have been started. Now, what's recommended is to tighten these bolts incrementally. So, a little bit on this side, come over here, do a little bit on this side, and the installation instructions say to torque it to spec. I don't know what spec is, so we're just going to really tighten them. Alright, bolts have been tightened securely on the new fuel pump. Now we'll take this hard line, which runs up to the carburetor. It'll just screw in right down here, and we will get our wrench, our 5/8 wrench. Tighten that. Just make it snug. You don't want to strip anything. Just don't overdo it. Also, overdoing it can also cause leaks, and we don't want those either. Remove the protective red piece from the fuel inlet line. And we'll take our soft line here and attach that directly. Ooh, that slid on so nice. That went on beautifully. Make sure there's no kinks in the line. Run our worm gear clamp up and over. And tighten it down with our flathead screwdriver. Okay, fuel lines are hooked up. Everything was buttoned up before. New fuel lines, new fuel pump. Let's give it a shot. Isn't it a glorious sound? I've missed this noise. I've missed the sounds of my Flowmasters. We'll let that run a little bit since it hasn't. And that's it. Now all I have to do is clean up and back this thing down off the ramps. First things first though, as it's running, let's check for signs of fuel leaks. And it looks like we've got something here. I don't know if you can see it dripping, but I do have a leak, so I need to fix that. But while it's running, let's still check other places. If I look in here between the cab and the bed, I can actually see these lines here. I don't know if you can see very well. That's for the ascending unit. Those look good. And let's come up underneath the truck. Those fuel lines look good, no leakage. So all I gotta do is figure out what I gotta do to fix that leak at the fuel pump. And suddenly it's another day and the project is complete. Unfortunately it did take a few days just because, you know, there's plenty of other things to do. But I got that hard fuel line back in place and I figured out the problem. Down here, I don't know if you can see it well, but you can see I put some white thread tape on that hard fitting. And that was the entire problem. You are supposed to use the white thread tape when you're putting those gas fittings back on so that they will not leak. But I've got the truck running, so we'll inspect for leaks. We'll start at the top. This tube goes into the soft line, nothing there. No leaks below, out of either the hard or the soft. If we peer between the cab and the bed, we can actually see the lines going into the sending unit, and there's no problems there. And looks like nothing dripping underneath the truck. That means the job is complete. So we're now getting gas to the engine, obviously because it's running, and I get to hear this beautiful sound again. I love the sound of Flowmasters. A lot of people might think, hey, why do all the work? Why put all the lines on if the fuel pump was the culprit? Honestly, I'm just glad to have all new fuel lines on it. That means they'll last that much longer. But with that, I hope you at least somewhat enjoyed my first ever instructional video on the channel. If this is something you'd like to see more often when I do a repair on a car, just let me know down below in the comments. If you liked it, hit that thumbs up button for me. I'm not a mechanic of any kind. I'm just a guy who doesn't have a lot of money. I work on my own cars when I can because it is way cheaper. And in a way I kind of like it. But like I said, if you liked it, hit that thumbs up button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell because that's the only way you'll know if I put anything else up. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at that car vlog channel as well. On those two you will see some pictures of the beast. And I apologize for the lighting, I'm running out of daylight here. But you will see some pictures of the beast, and if you've never been on the channel before, go check out the first two videos which have that in them. The first one's reviewed, the second one is all about this beautiful exhaust note. But thank you all for watching. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time around.